Pleasant afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to report about the internal validity in research. A researcher conducting a study or experiment generally wants two things to happen. He wants the study and the findings to be valid and reliable. So we have discussed in the earlier topic about the reliability and the validity of a research. So I'm just going to give you a brief summary of the report. So what is reliability? Reliability is the consistency of the test results. It measures whether the test gives consistent results at its outcome. So it means that the results obtained from a study, test, or research experiment are consistent and the same every time. So for instance, you measure the temperature of a liquid sample several times under identical conditions. The thermometer displays the same temperature every time, so the results are reliable. While validity is the extent to which a test measures and what it claims to measure. It measures whether the extent to which the test claims to measure is achieved. So validity refers to how accurately a method measures what it is intended to measure. If the thermometer shows different temperatures each time, even though you have carefully controlled conditions to ensure that samples temperature stays the same, the thermometer is probably malfunctioning and therefore measurements are not valid. To assess the validity of a cause and effect relationship, you should also need to consider internal and the external validity. So these are the two types of validity. So what is an external and internal validity? External validity refers to the extent to which results from a study can be applied, generalized to other situations, groups, or events. So external validity helps to answer the question, can the research be applied to real world? If your research is applicable to other situations, external validity is high. So while internal validity refers to the degree of confidence that the causal relationship being tested is trustworthy and not influenced by any other factors or variables. So we will discuss internal validity as our topic suggests. So as a research, you can only find out the accuracy of your research if there are no other factors to dispute your finding. So the confidence in the outcome is what referred to as internal validity. It is a way to measure if research is sound and done correctly. So internal validity is the extent to which you can confidently uh, assure you can be confident that the cause and effect relationship established in a study cannot be explained by any other factors. So when a study has internal validity, it means that any relationship observed between two or more variables should be unambiguous as to what it means rather than being due to something else. So what if the something else may be one or more factors such as age, gender, the attitude, religious belief, or political beliefs, or the condition under which the study is conducted, or the type of materials used. If these factors are not in some way or another controlled or accounted for, the researcher can never be sure that they are not the reason for any observed results. In other words, internal validity means that observed differences on the dependent variable are directly related to the independent variable and not due to some other unintended variable. So internal validity is related to how many compounding variables you have in your experiment. If you run an experiment and avoid compounding variables, your internal validity is high. The more compounding variable you have, the lower your internal validity. So, for example, you want to test if drinking coffee improves memory. So you conducted the experiment in two groups of people. So you assign the first group in the morning and then you assign the second group in the evening. The first group are given a cup of coffee to drink, while the second group is given only water. You give both groups a memory test. So after analyzing the test results, you found out that the first group performed better than the second group on the memory test. So can we conclude that drinking coffee improves memory? So for our conclusion to be valid, we need to be able to establish that there are no other factors affecting the result of our research. So we must be confident that the changes in the dependent variable are actually caused by the independent variable. Now, how can we check if our study has internal validity? So there are three necessary conditions for internal validity. And all of these three conditions must be present to establish internal validity. First is that the independent variables and the dependent variables change together. So, second, the independent variable precedes changes in the dependent variable. And third, no confounding or extraneous factors can explain the results of the study. So, in our example about drinking coffee to improve memory, the first two conditions have met. So, drinking coffee and memory performance increase together. So, and then the second one is drinking coffee happened before the memory test. So, it precedes the dependent variable. And the third one is not met because there is the time of day of the sessions are the extraneous factor that can equally explain the results of the study. So, because you have assigned participants to groups based on the schedule, the groups were different at the start of the study. Any differences in memory performance may be due to the difference in the time of day. So, therefore, you cannot say for certain whether the time of day or drinking the cup of coffee improve the memory for performance. So that means the study has a low internal validity and you cannot deduce a causal relationship between drinking coffee and memory performance. So why is internal validity important? Internal validity makes the researchers' findings credible. So a well-structured study having internal validity would be free from flaws, traps, loopholes, that would otherwise make the result obtained invalid, resulting in complete failure of then research undertaken. Second, to prove the worthiness of your research findings. This helps verify that the results permits the researchers to trust and believe. Uh, to this would in, this helps to verify the results drawn by researcher are indeed correct. So next is to trust and believe the conclusion of a study's causal relationship. So the internal validity helps state with a high degree of confidence that the independent variable is in actually the real reason for changes observed in the dependent variable. So deciding whether your research has internal validity isn't simply a yes or a no. There are certain factors that threaten to reduce the internal validity of any research and which needs to be accounted for, and they are as follows. So the threats to internal validity is subject characteristics, mortality, location, instrumentation, testing, history, maturation, subject attitude, regression, and implementation. So first is the subject characteristics threat. This occurs when the selection of subjects results in differences between groups that are related to the different variables being studied. So examples of differences are age, gender, intelligence, socioeconomic status, religious beliefs, political beliefs, and among others. So for example, in a study where students were grouped into two, so the first group was given taught through modular learning, distance learning, while the second group is taught through lectures, and discussions. So we say that the group one age from 10 to 12 years old, while group two age from 7 to 9 years old. So the first group may perform better than the second group because of age and the level of intelligence. So next is the mortality. This refers to the loss of subjects. For one reason or another, and for example, is illness, family relocation, accidents, or due to some emergency activities. Some of your subjects may drop out of the study. Those who are lost would have answered differently from those whom you obtained data. With the same example, we might expect the poorer students in each group to be more likely to drop out. If more of the poorer students drop out of either group, the other method may appear to be more effective than it actually is. So the third threat is the location threat. This means that a particular location in which data are collected or in which an intervention is carried out may create alternative explanations for our results. With the same example, the place where the students are doing modular learning may have more resources available to them than in the classrooms where students are taught by lecture or discussion. So the fourth threat is the instrumentation threat. This refers to how instruments are used in the study. So there are several ways in which effect an instrumentation effect may occur. One way is through what is referred to as instrument decay. The procedure for administering the instrument changes over a period of time. For example, if a person is collecting data by making observation, they may start looking for different things over a period of time. So another way is the data collector's characteristic. If these characteristics are related to the variables being investigated, they may offer an alternative explanation for whatever findings appear. And the third way is the data collector bias. There is also the possibility that the data collector or the scorers may unconsciously distort the data in such a way as to make certain outcomes, such as for the hypothesis, to be more likely. So examples include some are being allowed for more time to test than the more time on test than others. So the fifth threat is the testing threat. Testing participants with the same measurement on a regular basis has impact on their results. So participants are likely to do better as they learn the test or become more familiar with the testing process. Therefore, repeated testing could significantly impact the outcomes. And the sixth threat is the history threat. One or more unanticipated and unplanned for events may occur during the course of a study that can affect the responses of the subjects. A past event may directly or indirectly influence the result of research through the participant. So a natural disaster or politics could have an impact on the participants if they have experienced some natural disasters or their political beliefs. Seventh is the maturation. This means that time should be considered an important variable in research. So your participants become older and went through a biological time change in the course of your research. So for example, your participants are new to their job. Then after a few months, they become better at their job. So when you conduct another research, maybe the job satisfaction may improve. So the results may be different from the first one. Number 8 is the attitude of the subjects. It is how the subject view a study and participate in it. This happens when participants interact and observe one another. So for example, when some participants are given special treatment such as an access to the internet, or they work less than the other group. So negative feelings may arise such as anger, frustration, and resentment that could affect the participants' response to the study. Nine is the regression. So there is a statistical tendency for people who score extremely low or high on a test to score closer to the middle of the next time. So example is when some participants are given, it may be present whenever change is studied in a group that is extremely low and or high in its pre-intervention performance. So example, a group of students who scores in the lowest 20% on math test will, on the average, score closer to the mean on subsequent testing regardless of what transpires. Number 10 is the implementation. So the experimental group may be treated in unintended ways that give them an undue advantage affecting results. It could happen in either of two ways. First is when different individuals are assigned to implement different methods, and these individuals differ in ways related to the outcome. And the second is when some individuals have personal bias in favor of one method over the other. So, how to minimize uh, these threats? There are four alternatives to minimize the threats. A researcher can try to do any or all of the following. So first is the standardize. First, standardize the conditions under which the study occurs, such as the ways in which the treatment is implemented and the ways in which the data are collected and so on. And so on. This helps control location, instrumentation, subject attitude, and implementation threats. Second is to obtain more information on the subjects of the study. Uh, and use that information in analyzing and interpreting results. This helps control for a better subject characteristics threat and possibly a mortality threat as well as maturation and regression threat. Third is to obtain more information on the details of the study. That is where and when it takes place, extraneous events that occur, and so on. This helps control for location, instrumentation, history, subject attitude, and implementation threat. The fourth one is to choose an appropriate design. The proper design can do much to control these threats to internal validity. So let's look at this example and let's take a look what is the threat present in this research. So a researcher wishes to compare two different kinds of textbooks in two high school chemistry classes over a semester. She finds that 20% of one group and 10% of the other group are absent during the administration of unit tests. So this could be an example of mortality threat. So some of your subjects loss of some of your subject are lost or absent during the examination. So next is in a study investigating the possible relationship between marital status and perceived social changes during the last 5 years, men and women interviewers get different reactions from female respondents to the same question. So this could be an example of maturation threat. So over a period of time, your subject or samples have matured or have changes in their responses to your questionnaires. Then those students who score in the bottom 10% academically in a school in an economically depressed area are selected for a special program of enrichment. The program includes special games, extra and special colored materials, special snacks, and new books. So the student scores sustain substantially higher on the achievement test 6 months after the program is instituted. So this could be an example of there is a regression threat, a location threat, and what else? maybe maturation threat. So that is all for my report. Thank you and have a good day.